gonna do my own thing.
That was incredible! May I just say that 2023 was an amazing year! Actually, no, wait, scratch that. Let me rephrase that because somehow that does not sound right. 2023 was an amazing year for animated films. I've done this for a long time, and I have never seen a year with a good amount of bangers that can even be considered some of the best movies of the year in general. And what's interesting is that they all share a similar theme that is the key to their success and acclaim. If there is one lesson to take from this year's animated films, it's that the secret to great storytelling and great movies is progressivism. That's how many of them were able to make their story stand out by discussing about subjects that the medium was once hesitant to acknowledge, including acceptance, immigration, breaking the status quo, feminism, opening up about your feelings, and more. And these are just from the animated films. This is not to mention how that also applies to the most successful live-action films of the year. Some are from the fact that they were directed by women. This is also why it's been more common for anti-woke reactionaries and culture war fanatics to have mental breakdowns and commit clinically unhinged actions such as burning dolls, destroying beer cans, and promote terrorist-style conspiracy theories. And now they're so paranoid that they think literally everything is out to get them.
I'm going through my kitchen, I'm going to my refrigerator, and I'm starting to ask the question, well, is this ketchup bottle woke? Is this mustard? I mean, literally.
Don't worry, they keep that up and therapy will become unavoidable for them. Oh wait, did I say them? But the point is, we've seen more animated films taking risks like being progressive, and they've greatly benefited from them. However, I cannot say that this was a perfect year though. There have been a few duds along the way that make their experience less enjoyable per se. And that's what I'm here to figure out. After going through all of these movies throughout the year, I'll be counting down both some of animation's finest and their weakest. With so many features giving it their all, it's going to be very interesting to see where they find themselves. I'm Animat, and welcome to the top 5 best and worst animated films of 2023. Number 5. Worst. Miraculous, Ladybug and Cat Noir the movie. Okay, I'll admit that maybe this is a bit unfair of me to put this on the worst list, because prior to watching this film, I never saw anything from Miraculous Ladybug and Cat Noir. And when I went to review the movie during the summer, I went and analyzed it as a newcomer. And as you could probably guess, this movie did not impress me, let alone convince me to get into the franchise. I will give it that there are some elements that it did very well. The animation is wonderful, the action scenes are engaging and really pump up the excitement, and the score did help elevate the experience. However, despite that, and when you take away the iconography of the franchise, all you're left with is just another mid-at-best superhero family film. As much as I love the animation, it's not enough for me to look past many of its weak points from the writing, such as the boringly generic story, musical numbers that leave little to no impact, characters that are not as super as their powers. Both the acting and the humor can try a little too hard to the point that it can feel unpleasant, and a romance plot that isn't effective due to the bland personalities. It's the kind of movie where it's noticeable that it's made more for the already established fans than it is something that can be also welcoming to miraculous beginners. I could see how maybe fans can get on board with it and be invested with some of the parts like the love story, but if you don't have that connection beforehand like me, then there's not much you could get from the movie that will make it feel worthwhile. Ladybug and Cat Noir may be admirable heroes in Paris, but for someone like me who's unfamiliar with them, their first movie is anything but miraculous.
That got awkward fast.
Knowing what we know now.
Number 4. Worst. The Magician's Elephant. Remember when this movie was released on Netflix earlier in the year? No? Well then now you know why this movie is here. There's not much in this film that's worth remembering, and it's mainly because it feels like it's a wasted opportunity. I do understand why this became an animated feature. As it is based on the book of the same name by Kate DiCamillo, there is a charm to the concept that is reminiscent to a fairy tale. An inspiring and heartfelt story about believing in magic and that it's possible to do the impossible. The potential was clearly there, but Netflix unfortunately fumbled when producing the adaptation. Sure, some of that heart of the source material can still be found, but they mostly turned this into an unpleasant modern family film with bad writing, humor that doesn't work, and a bunch of weak characters with weird designs. It had a chance to be a timeless picture that is set in its own fantasy and allow its message to carry the whole picture. But the way it was built makes it feel like a dated, dull comedy that offers little that can be enjoyable, thus losing much of its value and have next to nothing that is worth remembering. Seriously, the only thing I could recall from this was that there was an elephant who came out of nowhere and crushed an old lady. And the rest went downhill from there. And on top of that, it's not even bad enough to be memorable in a negative way. Its flaws are not terrible to the point that it can be known for what it did wrong, which is why it's not even that high on the worst list. With how it did barely anything that was good or how it did nothing that was really bad, the only achievement that The Magician's Elephant ever got is being the most forgettable animated film of the year.
This is the best, right?
Knowing what we know now.
Number 3. Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken. Honestly, I do feel kind of guilty for putting this in the worst list. It already received terrible treatment from Universal with how they did next to nothing for its promotion and left it be trampled at the box office. I'd argue that what happened to the movie is objectively worse than the film itself. But even if it does have my sympathy, that doesn't mean that I find the feature to be good. Yes, it does have some creative ideas with how it created its own lore about krakens and mermaids, and does supply some colorful animation. But much like its distributor, Ruby Gillman doesn't really know what to do with itself. It's unsure of what kind of movie that it wants to be, or what kind of story that it wants to tell. So the writing decided to do so many things at once in a chaotic manner in the hopes that maybe something will stick from the massive clutter. And yet, it failed to get any of its goals to work because none of them got the proper time they needed for the execution to be done right. As consequence, the plot lines are left as bland, the characters are a bunch of tiresome tropes, and the comedy is not fun. Even the designs can be unappealing, where the most terrifying creatures of this feature are the humans. Seriously, what does Ruby see in this guy? Are you sure that's not the monster that drags you down to the bottom of the ocean instead of the typical love interest?
You know, I think I like the first one better.
If it put aside many of its plot points to only focus on a selected few for its story, then it would have gotten a chance to present itself as a strong original picture. But as is, Ruby Gillman is an unfortunate mess that wants to try everything, but succeeded at none of them. I get that it's not easy being a teenage kraken, but making a movie about one didn't make things better.
I think I am having a panic attack. Knowing what we know now.
Number 2. The Monkey King. Considering how big-name animation studios have recently been producing more Chinese-themed movies, it was only a matter of time that one of them would make a mainstream Western adaptation of one of the country's most famous fables. And I will hand it to Netflix that they did manage to make their version of Journey to the West stand out from the rest. However, it's all for the wrong reasons. The Monkey King took the classic tale and turned it into an unpleasant Hollywood-style bland kids flick, where it becomes a chore to sit through when experiencing the mean-spirited tone, the comedy that is more frustrating than funny, and some of the most loathsome depictions of the characters. Seriously, there's a fine line between presenting an egomaniac and making a ripoff of Maui from Moana.
Wow, my own assistant? Hard pass. This monkey, heroes alone.
If it weren't for that solid animation that provided some great action scenes, this would have easily been the worst of the year. Yes, I will admit that there are some good things to be found here, but there's just so many problems to go through in order to reach those positives that it doesn't really make it worth it. I will say though that I do find this to be around the same level as Ruby Gillman. However, there is one reason why I put this one above the Kraken on the worst list. Even if I don't find Ruby Gillman to be good, I will give it that it does have an original concept that makes it unique. With The Monkey King, on the other hand, there are literally dozens of Journey to the West adaptations that are better made and far more enjoyable than this, making the value of the Netflix version to become virtually useless. I am aware that the gods were never a fan of Sun Wukong, but they certainly did not give their blessings to his journey to streaming.
Fine. I said fine.
And the number one worst animated film of 2023 is Trolls Band Together. Compared to last year, DreamWorks Animation fell hard in terms of their movie's quality, going from highly praised pictures such as The Bad Guys and Puss in Boots: The Last Wish to disappointingly substandard films like Ruby Gillman and especially the third installment of Trolls. This is easily among the most soulless and most corporately manufactured animated movies in recent years. A film that is purely designed to milk a franchise for what it's worth, and every creative decision was made purely for the purpose of profitability. Even by the franchise's own standard, the writing is an absolute embarrassment, resulting in a predictably formulaic yet incoherent story, a cast of characters who are cringe, terrible comedy that is never funny, and an overall hyperactive tone that makes the experience annoying from beginning to end.
We're gonna have the best family reunion ever! Brozone 2.0! Brozone reunion! Brozone, here we bro again! Brozone, where'd they bro? I don't know, we're gonna find them!
Hey, I have a suggestion. Have you ever considered shut up?
Is this how people feel when they meet me?
Yes.
Yes, I agree that not everything in this picture is horrendous. The animation is an absolute eye candy with a vibrant color palette, present a strong scrapbook aesthetic, and the choreography is well done to accompany the remixes. I do acknowledge those positives, but there's just one problem. This can also be found in the previous two Trolls movies. What's the point of this when I can watch the predecessors who offer the exact same thing, but with a better script? Maybe not by much, but at least they somewhat tried compared to the absolute laziness of Band Together. I'll admit that the other films on the worst list are not awful per se. I consider them to be mediocre at worst who pale in comparison to the rest of the movies this year. But the third Trolls feature is the one that I can confidently say that it is definitely bad. And that is why Trolls Band Together is the number one worst animated film of 2023. Safe to say that I did not like that last movie. Like, I really needed to let out my grievances with that. But this is actually a good thing. I got all the negativity out of the way so that now the rest of this can be about the positives and the movies that I ranked as the best. And before we do go on that list, we gotta first give our attention to the honorable mentions. What I find that made this year so awesome for animated films is that, on average, they came out as solid. Throughout 2023, I find myself to have enjoyed most of the animated features that were released to a varying degree, and I look back at them in an appreciative way with how they did a good job. I'll even say that the movies I'll be listing here are well done in their own right. It's just that this was an incredibly competitive year for the best list that some that would have deserved a spot didn't make it. But still, even if they're not great, they deserve to have a moment in the spotlight for being good. And they are the Super Mario Bros. Movie. While flawed with its writing, it's the biggest fun-filled love letter to the most iconic video game franchise. Paw Patrol: The Mighty Movie. I'll admit that I didn't enjoy this as much as the first film, but this is exactly what you'd expect from a Paw Patrol movie. Under the Boardwalk. For a feature that Paramount tried so hard to hide from the public, this was surprisingly enjoyable. Leo! It's not Netflix's most memorable animated movie, but it is Adam Sandler's most heartfelt and best animated film, so that's worth something. Diary of a Wimpy Kid Christmas Cabin Fever. It's your typical Christmas special, but surprisingly, it's also the best of the animated Diary of a Wimpy Kid movies. Chicken Run, Dawn of the Nugget has lots of great stop-motion animation, but it's such an unnecessary sequel. And finally, Migration, possibly the safest movie of the year that is exactly what you'd expect from Illumination Entertainment. Now, let's say that the best and worst list would expand, and I'd have to include these features. Where would I put them? In that case, the worst would have Migration, Paw Patrol the Mighty Movie, and Chicken Run Dawn of the Nugget. The best would feature Leo, the Super Mario Bros. Movie, and Under the Boardwalk. And the one that is the true honorable mention in the middle is Diary of a Wimpy Kid Christmas Cabin Fever. Sure, they may not be found in the best list, but they still deserve a round of applause for contributing to a wonderful year in animation.
Have I ever steered you wrong?
A bunch of times.
Knowing what we know now.
Number 5. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. It felt like it wasn't that long ago when the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles captivated viewers with a radical update in Rise. But a year after the Netflix movie, the Turtles teamed up with Seth Rogen to create another new version that is wildly different than its predecessors for their big screen comeback. And the result is absolutely awesome. Of course, what really stands out with this picture is the insane animation. Taking the stylized CG look and bringing the Turtles back to their underground comic roots to fully embrace that this really is a mutant mayhem. Not to mention how they help create some really fun action scenes to deliver what audiences want to see with what they do best. The only thing that holds it back from being any higher on this list is that the story is a bit disappointing with the way that it plays it safe and makes this feel like a generic kids film. And if there's one thing that the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles should never do, especially looking like this, it's playing it safe.
I mean, it's 2023. Sorry, Dad.
Then again, it does make things up with something that it did that is debatably among the best from the whole franchise, and that is with the Turtles themselves. For the first time, they actually feel like legitimate teenagers. And thanks to the great voice acting, they are able to provide a good amount of charm that makes it feel like they are actually brothers.
Nobody's ever seen his face.
Why?
Because he kills everyone who does.
Cool.
No, not cool.
A bit cool.
I know some people say that this is cringe, but this is a rare instance that they actually make cringe a good thing.
Let's try that again, but with ninja stars.
As mutated as this movie is, this update to the Heroes in a Half Shell is completely messed up in just about all the right ways.
Enough talk! I dream about fighting every night.
You've got a rage problem, right?
snap.
It's not a problem!
Knowing what we know now.
Number 4. Elemental. And Wish. Yes, I am putting both of Disney's big screen animated features in one spot. I know that this is considered a controversial move, and I am especially aware of all the swords that are pointed at me for even implying that Wish is a good movie. But if you could set that aside, allow me to explain. The reason why I'm putting these two together is because they're very similar in more ways than just being released by Disney. I do agree that technically they are weaker than what you'd expect from either Disney Animation or Pixar, with the writing not being great. I understand that the story could have been much better handled, but even with a few flaws, that doesn't take away what it did good that makes these films enjoyable experiences on their own, including the breathtaking animation, charming characters that add some cute humor, and a strong soundtrack that features some memorable songs, including Elemental's Steal the Show and Wish's This Wish. Heck, I'd also throw in Knowing What We Know Now. I was surprised to find that one is a favorite amongst fans. And yet, even with the heart they can deliver, another unfortunate similarity they have was how there were some loud hate campaigns on social media for both. Even long before the films were released, people were ready to throw all their anger and hatred towards them as if Ember or Asha said something anti-Semitic. But in reality, the rage is because they're from Disney and that they're not perfect. And that really sucks because they had to be held at such an unfair standard compared to most of the other films this year. Again, I agree that they are both far from the best from their respective studios, but I think it's an exaggeration to say that they are the worst because there have been worse movies done by both Disney and Pixar and much worse films that came out this year. I mean, have you seen Trolls Band Together? But if you can look past the comparisons or what it could have been, you'll find that they are made as a labor of love. That the team behind them wanted to create something more than just another animated film so that the audience can experience something special. And after going through all that, it's nice to see that Elemental got that second chance to become a fan favorite. And I wouldn't be surprised if the same will eventually happen with Wish. 2023's been a rough year for Disney, but their animated movies still have some magic.
Last night, I made a wish on a star. And the star answered. Knowing what we know now.
Number 3. The Boy and the Heron. It was around a decade ago since legendary Japanese filmmaker Hayao Miyazaki announced his retirement after directing The Wind Rises. But in the typical Miyazaki way, what he decided to do now that he retired was getting back to work on another feature. I don't think that's how retirement works, but you do you. And the result of that moment was The Boy and the Heron, a movie that knows how to combine the familiar components that made the Studio Ghibli films so beloved and timeless, and originality in order to still feel fresh and maintain the element of surprise in the form of a semi-autobiography. It is because of this fusion that allows the film to deliver immersive world building that brings us to an engagingly unpredictable journey, and gorgeous 2D animation that highlights the beauty of nature in a very imaginative way. Not to mention that the English dub of this film is fantastic. Sure, that is to be expected with a lot of big-name stars involved, but some of the best voice acting of 2023 can be found here with the performances of Florence Pugh and Robert Pattinson. This is a triumphant return for Miyazaki and has all the materials needed to make this the best animated feature of the year. If it weren't for one problem. The only thing that's holding this back from being at number 1 is that it doesn't do enough to develop some of its characters, especially its lead Mahito. They're not very interesting where they only present a base of a personality and cause the first act to feel unenthusiastically slow. I could have been fully invested in this if there were just a bit more effort on showing us more of who they are and explain why we should care for them. Still though, maybe it's not his best work, but that doesn't eclipse the beautiful artistry displayed here. It's worth including to the Ghibli collection, and after watching his new feature take flight, it's great to see Hayao Miyazaki back.
So is that the truth or a lie?
A lie. Truth.
That would have to be a lie too.
Knowing what we know now.
Number 2. Spider-Man: Across the Spider-Verse. As the sequel to one of the most groundbreaking animated features, this was among the most anticipated films of the year. It was a daunting task to live up to the hype, especially in a time when superhero fatigue became stronger, but the continuation of Miles Morales' story proved to be a worthy successor. Maybe even better than the first film. And not only is it a great sequel, but it is a testament to the medium and a shining example of how literally hundreds of artists and filmmakers can come together to work on something beautiful and should all be applauded for. Except for these two. Considering how they've been called out for abusing and overworking their animators throughout their careers, I think it's time that we stop giving them credit and instead give it to the people who actually deserve it. Like the ones who did most of the work.
Send me home. I can't do that.
But back onto Across the Spider-Verse, it took everything that made the original extraordinary and elevated to make its own innovations feel fresh again with an amazingly engaging story, characters who add an unforgettable emotional core that emphasize what it means to be Spider-Man, some of the most gripping action ever animated in a movie, and the revolutionary animation that not only swings us to multiple universes, but present hundreds of different Spider-Mans with their own unique style and all sharing the same screen. And the craziest part of all this is that even if this is one of the longest animated features ever made, yet still able to grab audiences' attention from beginning to end, the story is not over. The movie ended off on one of the most shocking cliffhangers and already made the third film, Beyond the Spider-Verse, to be the next most anticipated animated movie, which that's going to be coming out when these guys learn to become competent and start respecting their animators. It's not just one of the best animated films of the year, but Across the Spider-Verse is also one of the best superhero movies, and debatably, the best Spider-Man film yet.
You gotta promise, Miles.
I promise.
And the number one best animated film of 2023 is... Nimona. The fact that this movie was able to be completed and shown to the public alone is a miracle in itself. Originally created at Blue Sky Studios before the company unfortunately shut down, Annapurna Pictures stepped in about a year later to save the movie from becoming lost media and assembled a team, some of whom were former Blue Sky employees, to finish the job so that N.D. Stevenson's novel can come to life. And not only did fans celebrate that it got fully created against all odds, but they were also amazed by how it turned out to be one of the best movies you could find on Netflix. If this could count as part of Blue Sky Studios' library, their last movie is also their greatest. Nimona is an exhilarating ride that always keeps the movie engaging and exciting with plenty of creative action, especially with all the title characters' transformations, a strong cast of characters that are accompanied by great voice acting, and beautifully stylized animation that brings all this chaos together. However, the enjoyable anarchy is not the only factor that makes Nimona an admirable masterpiece. The other key part that makes this such a memorable experience is its message of acceptance. How it speaks out against discrimination with the ways it can negatively affect both individuals and society, along with having some of the best LGBTQ+ representation in an animated feature, results in a powerful commentary that highlights a serious issue that is happening in reality to this day. And speaking of that LGBTQ+ representation, it's not every day that an animated family film presents a main character who is a trans or non-binary metaphor, and even a same-sex kiss in front of the camera. See, Hollywood, that wasn't so hard, was it? If Netflix and Pixar can do it, then there's nothing to be scared of.
Metal.
Like I said, the fact that it was finished and released is amazing in itself. But how it turned out to be incredibly well made and has the courage to show some representation is what helped Nimona to become the number one best animated film of 2023. And that concludes the top 5 best and worst animated films of 2023. This really was a time where the best from this year really gave it their all to also become some of the best of the decade so far. It's going to be quite tough for 2024 to follow that level of hype, but from the looks of it, they still got some exciting films that could make their time worthwhile. Are we going to be in for another exciting year for animated films? Well, let's see what 2024 has to offer. Sucks that it'll be on Netflix instead of theaters, but it does look cute. Looks like we got another Chinese-themed movie from Hollywood. Poe never failed me before, so I'm hoping he'll keep the awesomeness strong. Not sure now. I'll need more info on this before I can say something. I really don't know how to feel about this one. Some of the people who did The Emperor's New Groove is making a Garfield movie? You have my attention. I love the first movie, so I am hyped for this one. Hopefully a Sandy Cheeks movie will help spice things up for SpongeBob. We could be getting the first fully animated Looney Tunes movie, so this could be special. As much as I enjoy the Despicable Me movies, even I'm hesitant about giving it a fourth one. I got the feeling that this will see the bad reception of Wish and is gonna yell, "Hold my beer!" I don't know much about this IP, but I see Netflix is really hyping this up. TMNT made a new big screen animated feature, makes sense for Transformers to be next. Chris Sanders is back, and that's all you need to tell me to grab my interest. It's based on the book by the same author of The Bad Guys, so maybe there's potential. I honestly don't know, because as of this video, Disney didn't say what it is. Well, if Ginger and Rocky can come back, then I think this duo should have their new movie too. we'll see if the magic of Christmas will make this a new classic. A Lord of the Rings anime. I'm sure that statement alone will have some people excited. And finally, well, technically this counts. Yeah, I'm not looking forward for this one to come back, but I gotta admit, a prequel that focuses on the rise of Mufasa? Not a bad idea. See you later, dudes. Hey, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this countdown and looking back at the year, then don't forget to give this a like and subscribe for more fun-filled cartoon-themed videos. It's been a blast going through 2023, and 2024 is already looking like it's going to be quite the adventure. I hope you have a wonderful year, and until next time, once again, see you later, dudes.
Something, 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 we win.